Welcome to the Brilliant Fertility Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Rose, and this podcast exists to help illuminate the path ahead of you. With expert interviews, clinical pearls, and real client success stories, my intention is to bring you hope for what's possible on this journey and to give you tools and resources to navigate the ups and downs on the road before you. If you find this podcast helpful, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite listening platform. And I have a big request. If you have a minute, can you leave us a 5-star review? And let us know, what did you learn? What did you come away with? Did you leave with that spark of hope? This helps more people like you find the podcast. My mission is to support as many humans as possible on their path to become parent. And by you sharing and subscribing, you're part of that mission too. And I'm so grateful for you for being here. This would be a worthless podcast if we didn't eventually talk about the reality of pregnancy loss and the fear that comes along with trying to get pregnant after a miscarriage or being pregnant after a miscarriage. One of the most common experiences that I hear from my patients and clients who have conceived after a loss is just this sense of not only fear, but the need to almost disconnect from the pregnancy, almost live in this state of like, this isn't real, this isn't really happening, because if it is real, I'm going to have to accept the fact that this might not continue. And if I let myself go there, if I let myself be in that state, like, I won't be able to function. Or on the flip side, if I allow myself to be optimistic and excited about this, and then something happens, I'm going to fall so much harder than if I choose to just disconnect and protect my heart. So if that's you, if you've had that experience, I, as always, want you to know you aren't alone. But because people aren't really talking about this, it's not like common dinner table conversation, or you meet up with your girlfriends and have these types of heart-to-hearts, you may not know how common of an experience that is. And because people don't realize that that's a really natural self-protective mechanism, there's often some guilt carried with that. Like, oh my God, I should be excited about this. I should feel more joyful. I should feel more connected to this pregnancy, but like, I just can't bring myself to get there. And that duality of, wanting to be joyful, not allowing yourself to feel joyful, feeling guilty about not feeling joyful, it's not helpful. But I also want you to release any worry about that being hurtful either, because the additional, the layers of emotion can, for some people, escalate to a point like, if I'm feeling so negative about this, if I'm feeling so guilty about feeling negative about this, am I actually creating an environment in which something could happen to this pregnancy? And that's not fair to you. There's no scientific evidence that there's a possibility that having that type of emotion would impact a pregnancy. I've not witnessed that in practice. I've had patients who certainly, felt like they were living in fear until the moment they held their babies in their arms and their babies made it in their arms. So I don't believe, as a fertility expert, that a healthy pregnancy that is meant to be will be impacted by your emotional state. I get more concerned about, the emotional state leading up to a pregnancy. And of course, we want to do what we can to help people emotionally and mentally feel better through those first weeks when there's so much uncertainty. But I first just want to highlight how common that experience is, to feel afraid and to feel disconnected and guilty during the early part of pregnancy, when, if you haven't seen your baby on an ultrasound yet, there's so much uncertainty. Now, when it comes to pregnancy loss itself, it's very hard to imagine breaking down all of the different reasons in one episode. So I'm going to leave the root causes for pregnancy loss for future episodes. And I really just want to focus on this discussion around the fear and how to approach that piece first. Because the different reasons for pregnancy loss are so individual, and it is most commonly related to a genetic issue of the embryo that we had no control over, that you had no control over, that is not your fault. And so about 50% of pregnancies that end in miscarriage are related to a genetic issue like a trisomy 13, 18. And that's something that we don't have direct control over. The other 50% of pregnancy losses, and we have a small group of those that's related to autoimmune, that changes how blood flows and blood clots. We have blood clotting issues themselves that are often genetic in inheritance. We have infections, and then we have hormonal issues. So hypothyroid, inability to produce enough progesterone. And then we have, about 10% or so that's like unknowns, the ones that we may not ever be able to discover something on a test that gives us an answer. If there was one book to read about pregnancy loss, I would choose Not Broken by Dr. Laura Shaheen. She's a reproductive endocrinologist and recurrent pregnancy loss specialist out of Seattle. And this book is really well written, goes through all of the evidence that we have about pregnancy losses, all of the lab recommendations that she gives to her patients, and is also a good book to help understand what's happening in the body. And when we have understanding, this often alleviates some fears. So many fears come from a place of just not knowing, not understanding. And when we're able to gather good quality information, that can really bring some resolution. So when it comes to looking at your own individualized picture, I really feel strongly that you should be working with a provider who can look at the whole picture with you. Like, this is not something we want to DIY. And even if you've only had one pregnancy loss, I feel that that's worthy of attention. I have never agreed with the medical statement that we have to wait until someone has had 2 or more pregnancy losses to investigate the reason. I think that there's a lot we can discover about the internal environment of the body, about emotions and limiting beliefs and other suppression and blockage in the body, that we can start being proactive well before you even start actively trying to conceive again, so that you feel safer and more confident going into that process of conception. When we are kind of flailing around trying to gather all the information on our own, this tends to just rev up our nervous system more, right? So if you are Googling all hours of the night until your eyes feel like they're going to pop out of your head, that's not going to be great for your nervous system or your hormones. And even if you're feeling like, I don't even know who to start with, well, you're for some reason here listening to this podcast. So feel free to reach out to me. You can send me a DM on Instagram or send me an email at info@brilliantfertility.com. And we'll just start a discussion of whether your situation is something I can help with, or if there's someone else in the world who is a good source of information for you. But just know that 1 in 4 couples will experience a pregnancy loss. 1 in 100 will experience more than 2 losses. And those aren't incredibly small numbers. Those are, large pieces of the population that we're not talking about nearly enough. And especially given our current political climate where there's a lot of question marks over, the access to care that people will receive should they have pregnancy complications or miscarriage complications, that tends to just compound the fear. Like, we want to know that the care that you're receiving is the best care possible for you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And it's really natural to just be feeling a lot of uncertainty right now, um, collectively. But especially if you've had a loss within your own body, and the ability to trust your body, to trust that you were doing the best you could, and to trust that this isn't your fault. Um, so much of the work that I do with people post miscarriage and prior to conceiving again is the process of trusting themselves and their bodies again. And the antidote to fear and anxiety is not calm. The antidote is actually trust. Yes, the feeling state might be calm because maybe that feels more restful in the body. Fear tends to present for you as, tension in the gut or tightness in the chest or your heart rate revving up. Yeah, calm might feel like, oh, that's the opposite of that. Calm feels smooth and spacious and relaxed. But the bigger question is, well, what do we need to feel calm? What does our body need to feel relaxed? And a lot of times that resource is trust. So being able to find that trust, finding a provider you trust, finding the tools to trust yourself and to trust your own body, these are the antidotes. And I have an interesting episode that'll be coming up about reawakening my own faith and trust in higher power. That I've been on that journey for several years now, and I do believe that that is also a piece of rebuilding that trust with yourself and your body and your future child. When we're willing to look beyond the physical and we're willing to access the spiritual and surrender the pieces that we don't truly have control over. So I do believe that we want to ensure that hormones are in healthy places, that nutrient levels are in healthy places, that we don't have some latent infection that could be putting someone at risk for pregnancy loss, that thyroid is working beautifully, or we are keeping thyroid numbers in healthy ranges by using medication if needed, that the immune system is working properly. Like, I do believe all of those are important and we can influence those. But the pieces that we don't have control over, like when someone gets pregnant, exactly how they get pregnant, these are the pieces that I believe to some extent we can surrender. And when we learn to surrender those pieces, it frees up so much energy to be able to devote to what we truly have influence over. And that brings about more trust, and it all compounds on each other to bring about that state of feeling more calm and at peace. And there still might be days when people are wobbly in that faith within themselves. And that's when having a community that you can reach out to for support who really understands what you're going through is so valuable. And with the work that I've done with women who've had pregnancy losses, and especially recurrent losses, them knowing that they can reach out to me or their fellow members in the Brilliant Fertility Program when they're having those days when they're just really feeling unsure, that has brought them so much sense of love and community and peace. And we really need more of that in the world today. So those are my 2 cents, or my 15 minutes of sense for this episode. And we will have a breakdown of different underlying causes of recurrent pregnancy loss with future episodes. If you have specific questions about pregnancy loss, if you've experienced a loss, there's anything else that you wanted to learn more about, please let me know. I love supporting our listeners and their continued learning here, and feeling connected to you guys and nurturing you from afar. So I love hearing from you. And if you wouldn't mind taking a moment now to leave us a 5-star rating, leave us a review on your favorite listening platform, it would mean so much to me. And in other news, we also have our continuation of the F the Fear fertility training. And in this training, I will be reviewing the root causes of fertility, exercises to release the fear, come into more trust, allow the body to really truly enter that state of calm more readily. I'm not ever going to tell you to just relax, because that statement pisses me off almost more than anything. But I will be providing tools to actually help you find that state of calm and trust and develop that relationship with your body and understanding to allow you to continue down this journey. Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day.